Oh, okay. Got it. Now it's not moving. Oh. I'm going to quote from this book of Sophie's Concise Encyclopedia of Glass. The exact origins of glass are lost in the sands of time, but is likely to have been developed from experiments with glazes in Western Asia about 3,000 years before Christ. Glass is made from sand melted with a flux such as soda or lead oxide. The resulting mass, known as metal, is in reality a liquid in solid state of normal temperatures. At first, glass use was restricted to beads, the first vessels appearing in about 1500 BC. In Egypt, under the pharaohs, a material akin to both glass and ceramic was used to make figures and inlays for furniture. And then this in turn led to a profitable glass-making industry. Along with the objects made of other material, glass vessels were among the numerous items buried with the dead for their use in afterlife. And that's the end of the history lesson. When we think of liquid holders, we usually think of drinking vessels. But today we're going through the alphabet to realize the various uses for liquid holders. In the Mesopotamia in Western Asia period, circa 3000 to 1200 BC, there had been found goblets, straight-sized beakers, bottles, and bowls. In Egypt, circa 1540 to 12 BC in the New Kingdom, there were many forms of vessels, including beakers, jugs, vases, flasks, jars, and the small vessel for your oils. And the most popular color was blue. So here from Memphis, we see this popular cone-formed vase circa 1290 BC. The dark blue glass body is decorated with opaque white, yellow, and turquoise colors, spiral trailing combed into a festive pattern. Oh, sorry. These two vessels came from the Eastern Mediterranean circa about 6th to the 4th century BC. And then here is a small perfume jar from ancient Greece found in Sardinia circa the 1st century BC. We expected in the ancient times that it was a pottery that held liquids for wine or water. But here we see during the early Roman periods of the 2nd to the 4th century AD, some of the glass vases and jars. These particular objects display a rainbow-like iridescence because that's the natural result of attack by salts in the soil during the burial. B, the beer tankards. And we thought that the German beer stein or tankard was always pottery. But here you see a silver tankard, 1663, made by John Plumer of York, England. And this wooden tankard, which is a 2-pint, circa 1545. It was recovered from the lowest deck of the Mary Rose that sunk at Portsmouth, England, July the 19th, 1545, after 33 years of duty. It sank as it led the attack on the galleys of the French invasion fleet. And you may remember when Prince Charles went to the museum in Portsmouth when the ship was finally raised in 1982 and then put on display. Here's a ruby glass silver gilt-mounted tankard made at the famous Nuremberg, Germany School of Glass. And this is circa 1700. Ruby was considered a very luxury glass. And then you see this clear glass beer tankard made in Nuremberg, Germany, circa 1700. Now it's engraved with the image of a saint. So it was probably intended as a gift for a leading churchman. And the second one being a half-liter size with the printing, the Palace, Los Angeles, March 24, 1897 on the pewter top. The Palace is a famous Chinese restaurant, only about 3 kilometers from the famous Hollywood Walk of Fame. Then we go to C, and we all know our milk creamers, not just the China ones from our dining ware sets that compose of plates and teacups and sugar bowls and creamers, but also those pottery ones that always sit on the kitchen counter, filled and ready for our first cup of coffee in the morning. Well, as some of us have also the glass creamers from patterns of the 1800s and 1900s, made by Canadian, American, British, and continental Europe glass houses. Now, in Britain, they're not called creamers, they're called cream jugs. I have two pictures of the 5 of mine. From the left, okay. It shows the 4, I hope it shows the 4 emblems of Britain. It was made by Greener Companies in Sutherland. Now, it was English rose, Scottish thistle, and Irish shamrock. But notice that Wales was not a separate entity yet, so it's not represented on the pattern. And then you see the, I love this little one that has the little twigs for legs, and the square log, the twigs to make the square handle. And then there's my swimming swan there. I put a white paper there so you can see the swan. Okay, carry on. Oh, just before we do, this is a little fun one. Hang on. Okay. See, we're talking about creamers and milk. That's our little jumbo. And then it says at the bottom, mighty good, because it was a 3rd pint for milk for the children at school. And they made sure that at lunchtime, each child in Britain got that. Okay. Now, to go from C to D. Oh, what's on the screen now? To go from C to D, I have to first mention carafes. And they're smaller than decanters to hold the wine or water, but they never had any stoppers. You'll notice there's no stoppers, because they were filled in the wine cellar, or kitchen, and brought to the table for immediate use. And they were very popular during the 1790s and the 800s. The one on the left has what's called a kick base, probably French, and the other ones were English. And then in the latter half of 1800s, there was an addition of a tumbler, which would be inverted to rest over the neck of the carafe. So now we call it usually a tumble up. The guest could take the rest of his drink or her drink to their room for overnight use, or the tumble up could already be on the table by the bedside. And there's my 2. On the left is the French blue turquoise over white clear glass, about the 1860s, and then the cranberry glass Victorian era in the late 1880s. Now we can go to D. Now, so far we've seen glass liquids vessels that hold wine, water, beer, milk, perfume, and oils. Now we come to the decanters, which we do know strictly hold drinking liquids. But that sentence simplifies the term, because looking at this one picture now, if you were at my place, I would just show, say, look at all the ones on the shelf, and you would see the different colors and shapes and sizes and different types of stoppers. And some even have words written on them to tell what the liquid is inside. Not all of them were for wine. Mine have come from all over the world, from Canada, United States, England, France, and Bohemian countries. But I do not have an Irish Waterford one. That would be really nice. These are the 3 most popular colors. And then you see now the set of decanters that have spirits written on them. There's brandy, rum, and Holland. Holland is really gin. And then here's 2 that are showing sherry and port. And this is a bitters decanter. And you can see that it's smaller, about 6 or 7 inches, whereas the other decanters are 9 or 10 inches tall. Now I learned that, I think I went to the dictionary, I learned that bitters is a liquor with a bitter flavor used as an additive in cocktails, Or in Britain, it's a beer strongly flavored with hops and having a bitter taste. The square spirit decanters are similar to the traveling decanters known as spirit squares, which in the 1700s were packed in sets of 2 or 4 in special wooden boxes for fashionable gentlemen who refused to be parted from their spirits when they were traveling. And at home, these square-shaped decanters became very ornate. Now, this is a set, and you'll notice on the right side there's a lock, that frame called and the whole thing is called a Tankards. This one's about 1880, and I imagine the lock was there just so the servants in the household maybe couldn't do a little nippy every once in a while. And then these are the champagne decanters with the side accessed pocket to hold crushed ice. This was because chilled drinks were getting very fashionable in the 1700s, straight through the Victoria era to early 1900s. And there's my modern one. And we think we had the invention for our lemonade picnic drink in the last half of the 20th century. And yet we just finished seeing one in the 1700s. And then there was also the flagon type decanters. This style is oval in shape with a short neck and a glass stopper, or sometimes an mounted cork metal stopper. And mine is the one in the bottom right hand corner. It's a pink cranberry overlaid on clear glass. So obviously that was a picture from the book, right? I had to use some pictures from books. Now here's my amethyst flagon with the metal cork stopper. And there's the stopper you can see on the table. And then these were the ship decanters. You can see why the base would be so wide. You wouldn't want your liquid spilled over the floor when the winds blew the ship up and down and sideways. And even the stoppers were flat. Now there's my two, and you can see how flat they are. And then there were Newcastle or Persian style decanters. And they had quite a booglious body with an inward slope and then 3 ring necked. And I have one there, the one on the left, the cranberry one. Now it's funny, I don't know whether cranberry is so clear, this isn't in my notes, but maybe you could answer this for me. The 2 cranberry pictures I was trying to take, I couldn't get away from, no matter what I try to do, from the image of the camera. Is it because the glass is so thin, or is it just because of the red is more open type of thing? Because it's not supposed to have all those pictures, but I couldn't do anything about it. Then there's the cylinder decanters. They're just simply beautiful from the Victorian era of the 1800s. And I have many of those. But my favorite is my set of pillar pattern. It's English circa 1850, made by Bacchus and Green Company in Birmingham, England. And each of them have its own blue glass coaster on my dining room buffet. This is the pattern I collect. I have lots of things in it. Now we get to E finally. Oh, I got to keep going. The dictionary says a ewer is a large pitcher or water jug with a wide mouth. That's a pretty wide definition. The style of ewers were popular in the 1700s and 1800s to about 1870. And then gradually the styles changed and ewers were stopped being made. However, we do know that ewers were not ever made in this tankard style of straight up and down shape. That would definitely be a water jug or pitcher. Now for F, we have the flasks. I wonder if you're thinking of those metal cylindrical water holders that you take when you're jogging, or those small, flat, silver-coated pocket flasks that maybe your uncle or someone in the movies pulled out of his pocket to take a little nip of something that was not water, but a spirit. I wonder what. Well, when it comes to flasks, they've been manufactured in great variety since the ancient times. The term refers to a vessel holding wine, spirits, or other liquids for table use, variously shaped but characterized by a neck, mouth, and usually a stopper. Now that could be any decanter. So I like the second definition. The small flat bottle up to 1 pint capacity for holding wines and spirits and designed for traveling. That is, it could be kept in a pocket or hung from the shoulder. For our glass club member, it's fun to see and obtain a famous Nazi flask with its red glass and white pooled trails on the flattened oval form, made in the Nazi Glassworks, Bristol, England, beginning in 1806. And my flask still has its cork on it. This glasswork company also used blue glass with white trails. Now, the second one on this stand is not from Nazi Glassworks, but remember, other companies in England also began making a similar style of trailing in the late 1800s. And mine's from August Richardson and Son from Starbridge, England. But you can see they're quite different than the original Nazi ones. And then, gee, what can I say? I know some of you have been at my place and you've seen I've got goblets from all over the world, but I just put a few out, like starting from the left. I've got animals, and so there's a grasshopper one. I've got fruit, and you can see that's the pineapple stem. And then I've got people. That's my famous actress. I collect actors as well. And symbols, the fleur-de-lis. And then I go from the left here, flowers. There's an open rose one. There's an etched, got quite a number of etched ones, and that's the monkey. And then we've got, well, I would say it was Brad's collection, but it's mine now. The lead glass, that's the Uberler bullseye. And then our famous deer and dog that Brad and I collected. And it goes from the water goblet, 6.5 inches, champagne size, the clarinet, the wine, and the cordial, the tiniest one I don't have yet. But there's, whoops. Okay, so I thought I'd skipped one. Now I have 2 stories to tell about goblets. The first goblet that Brad and I bought was the one on the left, which is Eastern Star, made by Burlington Glassworks, Hamilton. We bought it from Mr. Hazard at Fallbrook, Ontario in the Ottawa Valley in 1967 for $6. So this star is what began our own collection that I have today. The second one, Starflower from the Nova Scotia Glassworks, was bought, now I have 2, but this particular one was bought in 1995 in London, England. Now, how did it get to England? Well, probably it was bought in England by someone who had vacationed in Nova Scotia. No, sorry, got it wrong. Probably it was brought back to England by someone who had vacationed in Nova Scotia or had come across overseas to visit a relative who had emigrated previously to Canada. My husband had just retired in 1995, and he went on his own to London in November while I was still teaching. He found this one in a little shop on the bottom shelf for £5. This star prompted me to retire from teaching a year earlier than I was going to. The next June, 1996, so I then could go on succeeding trips. He wasn't going to go to London without me. H, the hyacinth bulb vases. Now, finally, there's a vessel holding liquid that's not for drinking. This time it's water for the flowers to drink. And this is a book from Ashbury, from New Bond Street in London. And the whole book shows all the lovely hyacinth vases. But I love the poem, the first one on the left side. and the hyacinth purple and white and blue, which flung from its bells a sweet peal anew, of music so delicate, soft, and intense, it was felt like an odor within the sense. As you can see, they come in all shapes and colors and sizes, but you remember it has to have the wide bulb to put the bulb in. This, let's see, mine. Okay, so the one on the left is the Bristol blue one with gold enamel and white enameled flowers, and then there's the Vaseline opalescent vase, and then the little tiny small Bernice coloring, the pink going down to the yellow, and that's, I think, in the swirl pattern. Now we're up to high. Ink wells and stands. Glass ink bottles or wells were made from 1750. They could be individual or in pairs in various shapes and sizes and styles. The most decorative one was during the late Victorian era in the late 1880s. This picture shows an inkwell with on the left bottom corner, millefeuille disc at the base. And then there's a square pair, which would have been carried in a traveling container. And then there's one mounted with the silver marking London 1827 with a detachable glass well and chain topper. And then there's one from the Nova Scotia diamond glass pattern from Nova Scotia Glassworks. It was very important for a Victorian desk to have a whole set that included 2 ink wells, blotters, seals, ashtrays, a paper knife, pen trays, and picture frames. And then here's 3 very interesting different types of inkwells. Now jars. Here's my 3. Quite battered up actually, but the little one there on the right is wood, and then you see it does have glass. That's the little inkwell that fits inside the pair, and that's for the ink. Okay, now we're up to jars. Now, depending on what research book you read, different terms are used when categorizing items: creamers or cream jugs, ewers or jugs, decanters or bottles, sealers or jars. Okay, sealers or jars. Now we know the dictionary says a jar is a glass container. What a general statement. But then you go to the word sealer in the dictionary. It's a glass jar, having a glass or metal lid secured by metal bands secured onto the mouth of the jar. There's 2 of mine, and you can see the jars. So I really shouldn't be concerned when the book Treasury of Canadian Glass, put out by Doris and Peter Hewitt, the title says sealers, but throughout the article, the word jar is used. So our fruit sealers can be called fruit jars. Glass jars have been made since ancient times. Roman glass jars were frequently blown with unrefined green glass. There were tall jars up to 20 inches, manufactured in Barcelona from the late 1550s. But today we're just looking at our Canadian jars. And there's my beaver one. That one's a half-gallon size, made by Ontario Glass Company in Kingsville, Ontario. And I think also at Sydenham Glass Company in Wallaceburg. And then on the right, you see the perfect seal. It's a quarter size, and that has the glass top with the wire holder, made by Dominion Glass. Now, this beautiful set called jars. And you can see 2 liquid ones. I think the oil is, both the vinegar and the oil are at the back of this set. And then I only have clear pictures, but these were type of jars were used for medicines. And the blue ones, they could be in amber or dark blue or green, but the blue ones signified that the content was poisonous. Now we see glass pickle jars. Remember, pickles are kept in juices, so that's why I could count those in liquid. The first pickle jars sort of appeared around 1810, and they were pretty well clear. The green one is about, I think, 1870, and then the other clear one was 1825. It was much earlier. Now you'll see on the left here, a pickle jar with the press pattern from the United States around 1871 to 1910. And then this beautiful pickle cruet in Aberdeen coloring with its matching fork from Mount Washington Glass Company. And it was called a pickle jar. But what a difference in beauty from a plain one to one like that. Now here's my two. The one on the left is the ball pattern, or notched bar, sometimes it's called, with its lid and the fork, and it was made by McKee and Brothers in Pittsburgh. In Boston, the bottom of the jar is Henry Richard Chicago. Now, he was a manufacturer who bottled ketchup and mustard and pickles and olive oil during the late 1800s and early 1900s. So this was probably produced specially for his business. And then you see my beautiful cranberry pickle cruet with the fork made by Northwood Company in Indiana. And it's in the panel's sprig pattern with the gold gilt and the enamel painted flowers, which can be called a jar. But personally, I will still call it a cruet, which sounds like a much more fanciful name. And then I have a little book from the Bix Company in Scarborough, and showing inside that book a lot of different styles of the pickle jars that you could buy. Then we go to lamps, kerosene. And when you think of these antique oil lamps, two top authorities in this sphere are Joyce Byrne and latterly Catherine Thurl. I only have book 2 of her book, but what a collection of pictures there are. The era of kerosene oil lamps began in 1859 with the drilling of the first oil well in Pennsylvania. It was the first major breakthrough in the history of lighting, and it became cheap and very affordable. Now, there are many forms of kerosene lamps, table lamps and practical clear lamps and bracket lamps and hanging lamps. And you could see these two. This is mine, and I got on the chair in the hallway to take a picture of that. So you really got a good close look at my one in the hallway of thumbprint. And then I have a cranberry one in the dining room, and it has its little, at the top, the little opal glass smoke bell with a cranberry edge. And then I have, oh, there's a lot of different ones there. Such a variety. I didn't know which picture from her book to take, but I like that one. And then there's my own Gone with the Wind one, which is sitting on my piano. But I can imagine in the Victorian age, sitting on a table in a formal Victorian lounge room. And then there's the small little nutmeg lamps and the guardian angel lamps, probably to sit beside the bed. There's my 4. My nutmeg lamp is blue with the handle and the wick is still inside. Then the miniature night lamps would probably just give enough of a glimmer of light, probably to help children to not be afraid in the dark. So there you see my ruffled bullseye, probably made in Montreal at Dominion Glass Company. Then the swirl from the Independent Company, probably 1920s. And then the pink Cosmo encased one from Consolidated Lamps and Glass Company in Pennsylvania. It was originally called Daisy because of the flower in the middle. I hope I'm not boring you too much. Then lemonade sets. They began in 1875 into the 1900s, and up to this date, people had enjoyed not just alcoholic drinks, but also like the, and I quote, the more genteel beverages. The tall glasses you see appeared early when lemonade graduated from a lady's drink to becoming universally popular. In fact, in our own province of Nova Scotia, bottles were made to hold a variety of soft drinks manufactured by Kempton Brothers and Company of Halifax. And the manufacturers, there were quite a number of manufacturers of soft drinks in Nova Scotia. There was ginger ale, sarsaparilla, soda water, lemonade, and other drinks. This is an advertisement showing that the pop manufacturer Horn Company bottles would hold several kinds of fruit drinks, including lemonade. Now there's my fruit bottle. Now in the middle, towards the left side, you'll see it's kind of a blank spot. And I think that's where the paper label was to say what kind of drink it was. Now here's a catalog page showing around 1902 from Vermont Glass. They were really well known for their lemonade sets. But here's the question. How do you distinguish a water set from a lemonade set? The three on the top, oh, I could only fit two in the picture, are labeled water, and the bottom ones are called lemonade sets. Now they look the same. I wonder why. I wonder if because of the popularity of soft drinks, did companies just label their sets and catalogs to draw more business? Now there's my two sets. The last one is, the one on the left is Darling Grape. And it's probably for water or maybe a wine set because of the grape's design. But I think my rounder, smaller one of Honeycomb is a lemon set with its shorter glasses, only about 3 1/4 inches high. Then we come to mugs. I love this old 1700 beer mug, typical barrel shape, although some early mugs are cylindrical. Mugs at this time could be this transparent purple or light or dark amber or light or medium green. You see from this catalog, early 1800s from Duncan and Sons, Pittsburgh, had first the plain glass mugs and then paneling near the bottom there by 1890s. They look more like nowadays styles. And of course, there was always the novelty mugs that become a collection in itself. And here's my Ned Hanlon mug. I've taken a picture of this one in opal from the book, and then the clear. And there, Gina, is yours that I have. In my other one, I cut a picture of Ned Hanlon and put in so you could see really what it would look like. He's sitting with the and pulling at the oars, but we've got the two of them now. And Ned Hanlon, I don't know from you people who are in the west of the province whether you would remember him, but he's quite famous. He's an oarsman from Toronto, and he practiced going around all the Toronto Islands. Anyway, he won the River Tie England competition, and he beat out the Australian champion. So we were really quite pleased. So Henry Greener and Company in Sunderland designed the mug to mark this event because rowing was such a popular pastime. And there's a newspaper clipping showing the men following the two fellas. And then at the bottom, at the very end, the Australian man, Edward Trickett, shaking hands with Ned Hanlon. He was apparently very shocked that he had not won it himself. And I hadn't realized that at our Canadian, oh, it's gone from me. You know, the show in August down at the grounds there in Toronto, they had a monument for him. I don't think it's there anymore. Nappies. The form of nappies or sauce dishes seem to be a North American glass houses concept for dessert dishes such as fruit with their juices and applesauce. In Britain, though, they were for jelly and sweetmeats, and that was candied fruit or sugar coated glasses, about 4.5 inches tall. They were often put on tiered tasses or salvers, if you want to call them, to make a spectacular sight on the table. This pair is from my great-grandmother, Mrs. Clyde, in Scotland. However, in the early 1900s, British Glassworks began making fruit sets with large bowl and small fruit dishes. This is the Tysdale pattern set from Selby Glass Company from their Tyne factory in England, probably for export to for the American market. And the Canadian American glass houses had made a lot of little nappy dessert dishes. The one at the back is from my Deer and Dog pattern, and then beside it is the classic pattern, and then beside that is the barley pattern, and then at the front is the Cocorian maple leaf with the Canadian flange, and then my Atlantic line at the four corners. You see the lines. Okay, letter O is a bit tricky. I was thinking of olive oven dishes, but that means heating the cooking items and the liquid would be gone by eating time. Maybe, except maybe the gravy, but gravy boats were either silver or china, unless Pyrex company made them, I don't know. So I'm going to diverse a little bit. Instead of saying what would hold things would hold liquid, I've gone to the actual coloring of the glass, and there's 3 with O's. The opalescent glass, and this color is produced by slower cooling of the molten glass in those parts which are thick, causing some crystallization inside the glass. And if you put a light from the top, it shows golden blue, and if you put a light behind it, it'll be golden color that shines through. Another type of opalescent glass is this one, the milky white opalescent edge. This one, and then it was let's see, they reheated part of the molten glass when it started to cool, and then put the chemicals on to reheat them to get the white. These tumblers were made by Davidson Company, Gateshead on Tyne in England, patented March 31st in 1888. And then a number of American factories also made this type of opalescent glass during the period of 1890 to 1920. Then the second O is the opal or opaline. It's less transparent, but it still shows the fire when held up to the light. There's a back rack jug with a little blue trim, and then there's bottles that had comical transfers on them, showing letters in the shape of letters for brandy and gin. There's also bottles of rum and whiskey. And then there's the last type, and that's the opaque. O-P-A-Q-U-E. This isn't dead white. It's just partly translucent. And this oil bottle is from Staffordshire, England, as is the pair of the cornucopias on the wall. Now, although not a liquid vessel, I noticed my lampshade on my lamp on the kitchen counter is opaque because it lets the light shine through. P. Perfume bottles. They've been made from the ancient times to nowadays. There's a lot there, scent bottles appearing following the British, following the European designs, and they were flat in shape. They would often be in pairs to go in a traveling case, one for the perfume and one to hold the smelling salts. I guess in the Victorian times, ladies were prone to fainting because of those tight corsets they wore under their dresses. And then in the 1800s, perfume bottles were made to use at home. And a lady would have her own personal bottles in which the scent she bought from the perfumer or she made herself and was decanted into those ones. Okay, here's my two. They were really made, became very decorative to sit on the bedroom dressing table. The one on my left is the green is 3-layer. It's clear overlaid with white and then overlaid again with a salmon pink. And it's was made by Boston and Sandwich Glass Company between 1850 and 1870. And then you see the clear bottle, deeply engraved with a wood scene of a stag and 2 dogs, one of them jumping at the stag. This is probably made from Bohemian glassworks around 1860s. And then in the early 1900s, customers were giving up mixing their own perfume in favor of buying name brands. Then we saw massive commercial expansion in the perfume industry, dominated by courtiers such as Chanel, Niga, Ricky Dianne, and Oscar de la Renta. On the left, in the picture, you will see my little one with Lalique bird top made from Nina Ricco Perfume Company. The others are Oscar de la Renta, and you can't see the name of, well, you can barely see it where the perfume is, and then the Coco Chanel. That was my mom's. Now, on to Q. Queen Victoria commemoratives. A big celebration and novelties are always popular and are great money makers. And we see royalty items such as figurines and plates and bowls and mugs and glasses, and especially for special occasions like royal weddings or coronations or jubilees. Whoops-a-daisy. Okay. I have missed a picture. We'll go on. R is rummers and reamers. Rummers were made in Britain during the Georgian period of the 1700s for drinking toddy, which is a rum punch, or the naval drink of rum and water. It's not the German wine glass style, roamers, from the 15th and 16th centuries that had a flared foot and applied frontals on the stem. Rummers had a short stem, a wide bowl, and a capacity between 8 to 15 fluid ounces. Most were designed to be sturdy, hard-wearing tavern glasses of lead crystal, featuring very simple things, but these ones you see are quite fancy patterns. Now, the reamer. Reamers are a 1900s invention. Glass reamers were very popular during the 1930s to the 1950s. They're circular dishes with a raised pointed center used to extract juice from the citrus fruits. Most have a handle and a spout so that extracted juice could be poured into another container, such as a tumbler or pitcher. Some have a ring of points or ridges around the center part to catch the seeds. Small reamers were made for lemons and limes, and the larger ones were for oranges and grapefruit. And now those pretty glass ones, you see a lovely painted one, and nowadays see the ordinary plastic one. Wish we still had and used the glass ones. Okay. S, soda bottles. Soda water, a favored pot, was invented in England in the 1880s. And by 1870s, actually, became popular in the United States. Several of our Canadian glassworks made them for soda, and most were clear, but some were aqua or sun-colored amethyst. In Nova Scotia in 1858, there were at least 7 soda water manufacturers, and by 1890, there were about 43 pot factories. That's a favorite one, Arcadia. And there's my jumbo bottle of the 1930s made by Dominion Glass Company. And it has the Montreal trademark on it, and his name and picture with a raised trunk. And around the bottom rim, it says jumbo beverage RG contents 60 ounces. Fabric Pa W. Bisonnet. That would be the company. And it still had its cap on it. This one was for cherry soda. I was amazed that the cap was still on it. Now we come to tea. And you thought I might say tea for tumbler. No, here's a surprise for you. Today, tea is for teapots, glass teapots. Now, I always thought of the glass coffee pots or coffee crafts. They're very common, but I never thought of glass teapots. Silver tree services, beautiful china teapots, but glass teapots, wow. They say proof is in the pudding, but I say proof is in the picture. That was the clear one from Corning. And this one is a nice ruby glass teapot marked CF. It had silver mounted and it was created by Kunkel. I'm not sure whether I pronounced his name properly. He was a chemist in a factory in Potsdam, Germany around 1700. Now we go to you. Unfortunately, the glass makers companies are not very considerate to the last letters of the alphabet when making their liquid vessels. All I could come up with for you is utensils. Remember, we already spoke about the kitchen reamers holding lemon or orange juice. Now we have the liquid utensil, the glass funnel. This time to transfer wine from the storage cask or bottle to the decanter or carafe to serve at the table. A standard utensil in the 1880s, but a slightly different liquid vessel. This one has a hole, so it did not completely hold the liquid. My glass funnel is circa 1870s of the Riven style, meaning it's ribbed. Now, V's better. We can mention vases. This is a vessel that can hold its liquid. So many beautiful styles and sizes and colors from ancient days to nowadays, many made in the same coloring and patterns that we see in other glass containers. What to say? Then I thought, what is the most famous vase in the world? The Portland vase, of course. This Roman cameo glass vase with research points to the last part of the last century BC, and it's now in the British Museum in London, England. You see the lovely dark base, which looks almost black and covered by the opaque white, which has been cut to create the design. It has two handles, and through this research, it's been determined it was made for Caesar Augustus, the Roman emperor at the time of Christ. They're all together, all the way around, 7 figures. But the only name definitely identified is Cupid with his arrow. Now, Stephen Pocket Hill, who researched and wrote this paper about it, says he feels the figures were Caesar Augustus and people related to him. It is wonderful to try to see both sides of this magnificent vase. But I have a famous vase. Oops, there's the other side. Okay. And that's my little Tiffin glass one, only 10 inches high, but it's really lovely, lovely black satin. And I like it so well because the little paper label is still on it. Now we go to W. I quote the inscription under the picture in the book where I got this seeing the collection of glasses demonstrating the versatility of the wine glass makers, it says. It's believed wine was first made in the 4th century BC in ancient Middle East, but we'll concentrate on the glass made from 1700 to 1900. I always wondered why wine glasses were smaller than even the claret glasses at this period of time. Well, wine was mostly consumed by the aristocracy and their households, and the growing merchant middle class was using beer and ale. In Britain, there were different customs regarding meal times, and when different drinks were offered, there were different times of day and different sizes. So you can see this whole set, and it has different sizes of goblets. Okay. Each course of the meal would have different wines served for other drinks. The clear glasses would hold red wine, and then you can see my two late Victorian era colors of red and green, circa 1860 to 1888. They would hold the white wine or pale sherry. Reaching into the 1900s, format for dinner and drink time changed with less glasses and some glass sizes left out. And now we have glasses that share the drinking type of liquid that they hold. Now on to X. X marks the spot X. X is a letter when there is a question about something. So here's the question. What are these two little bottles? Obviously, they're not really candle holders, but that's what I use them for. I wonder if anyone knows. These lords show ermine trimmed robes, coronets on their heads, swords hanging from their belts, and each are holding an orb with a cross on the top and a scepter. What did they hold for their liquid? Well, they're liqueur bottles and probably had cork stoppers. Liqueurs were strong, sweet spirits to drink after mealtime, whereas a cordial drink was the sweeter fruit-flavored drink and a mid-afternoon drink in the Victorian era. Yellow Vaseline glass for Y, XY, yeah, the magic glass. Yellow green glass was very popular in the Victorian times, and then in the 1950s began reappearing on the market. It's been called magic because it can change its color. This is because of the uranium being included in the recipe. Uranium responds strongly to ultraviolet light and it glows with a ghostly green color. This yellow green could also be called uranium glass. Manufacturers never called it Vaseline glass. This is a term that was started by the antique dealers in the 1950s. And Z. I don't speak German, so I may not pronounce this properly. Zenith Gold Glass. We end with that last letter of the alphabet Z. This is a very special kind of glass. Bohemian glassmakers were experimenting with various techniques. Remember Conlett, the chemist at Potsdam? One success story was the use of gold between layers of glass, the so-called Zenith Gold Glass, which revived ancient Roman techniques of gold sandwich glass. Now, however, 2 layers of glass were carefully polished to fit perfectly within one another. The fine gold leaf was used to apply delicate pictures between the 2 layers, and then the glass layers were sealed together. Quite a process. It was very popular in the Bohemian countries from the 1730s to the 1750s, and then later again copied in the 1800s. Well, what a wonderful way to think of the letters of the alphabet through our favorite pastime of antique glass collecting. And I'm sorry it was so long, but it was fascinating to me, and I hope you didn't all fall asleep.